morning. Ricardo Gaudino, Golden State History, Transportation Ag Education Fund. I'm at the mouth of the Napa River. This river has a key significance to California, to unlocking the story of the entire Golden State. So today, I have several questions to energize your thirst for knowledge. Who named America? How did ALTA California come about? Who named your town? I invite you now to know your story as a patriot and learn about the place.
I'm glad that we're here, and I want to turn it back to Harold Miller because he does an outstanding job. Retired Superior Court Judge Phil Champlin has a story to tell. Welcome, sir.
Ricardo Gaudino has asked each of us to speak about some part of the history of Napa County, as Harold Miller indicated a moment ago. I have chosen the time just before California's statehood in 1850. Leading up to the American Civil War about 11 years later. Napa County used to include what are now Sonoma and Lake counties, and all of this area was of course once part of Mexico. It was known as Alta California or Upper California to distinguish it from Baja or Lower California. In the mid-1840s, there was a war between Mexico and the United States, which resulted in Alta California becoming part of the U.S. During this time, there were many U.S. Army soldiers in the area. Also, many of the Westerners who had moved out from the East in the 1830s and 1840s participated in the fighting to make Alta California part of the United States. California became a full-fledged state in 1850. There was another Army lieutenant named Joseph Hooker. Hooker also later became a famous Northern general during the Civil War and was known as Fighting Joe.
Fighting Joe Hooker. I've read that that was a graphical error, that it said something about the fighting and general, and then there was supposed to have been a comma, but the comma didn't get into the article, so it was called Fighting Joe Hooker, and it stuck, and thereafter, and I think he probably enjoyed it, why he was known as Fighting Joe Hooker. And I don't know where it talks about it here in this wonderful Historical Society museum to the life and times of General Joe Hooker here in Sonoma, but they say that the name that is given to women of easy virtue came from the camp followers of General Hooker's Army of the Potomac. I'm not real familiar with how that came to pass, but somehow Hookers are derived from Fighting Joe Hooker's armies.
But I understand that what occurred is that he was part of Sherman's campaign to burn the South. He was one of the generals that followed Sherman. Then the funny thing is that Sherman and Hooker were both here at Sonoma, and Hooker followed Sherman's command.
Right. Well, many of the generals in the Civil War earned their spurs, so to speak, in the Mexican-American War, and they were all out here and came up to Alta California after the Mexican-American War and were stationed out here in the new western, emerging western states, the Pacific Division of the U.S. Army.
And they were stationed
right here in Sonoma.
He defeated the troops of Southern General Robert E. Lee at the Battle of Chattanooga.
What a wonderful letter.
Oh, is that the letter from
Lincoln? Of course I have done this upon what appears to me to be sufficient reasons And yet I think it best for you to know that there are some things in regard to which I am not quite satisfied with you.
And who's he writing to?
Hooker. He's appointed Hooker head of the Army of the Potomac. I believe you to be a brave and skillful soldier, which of course I like. I also believe you do not mix politics with your profession, in which you are right.
So this is a letter from President Abraham Lincoln to Hooker,
appointing him head of the Army of the Potomac, but he's critical of his service under General Burnside's command, during which, according to Lincoln, you thwarted him as much as you could, in which you did a great wrong to the country and to a most meritorious and honorable brother officer. I have heard in such a way as to believe it of your recently saying that both the Army and the government needed a dictator. Of course, it was not for this, but in spite of it, that I have given you command. What I now ask of you is military success, and I will risk the dictatorship. Oh, Lincoln had a wonderful way with words. For a self-educated man from Indiana and Illinois, he certainly
he had a country sensibility of spinning it, eh?
Certainly did. Well, this is fascinating to see Hooker's house.
Hooker also lived in Sonoma, and in fact his home is still standing. Hooker's troops were said to have attracted many women of easy virtue who socialized with the soldiers and who thereafter took his name. Napa County has a rich place in the history of North America, starting with the Spanish and Mexicans who originally settled here and continuing up into California statehood. Of course, it also has an equally rich Native American history predating the arrival of the Europeans. Our community history is being made every day, and you are now part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I said I wanted everyone to go home with a fact. You know, well, I have mine now.
Yep.
Yeah. We all do. Patty, are you ready? Come on. Patty Wyman, who is from Silverado Middle School.
Hi, I'm Patty Wyman. I'm the leadership teacher at Silverado Middle School, and last year Rico contacted me about a project that he had about the naming of America. And he wanted to know if my students knew who named America.